Hey, today's episode, we sit down with my good friend Chris, who ran the Fugitive Apprehension Unit for Phoenix PD. Yes, there's flashbangs involved. Let's go. Got time it right, Dave. There we go.
You got to get it.
I remembered.
So this one's volume?
No, this is the separate audio recording.
Okay.
So if for some reason the video craps out, we have a backup audio recording, so we still have it.
Got it.
Yeah, that's how we roll. Hey guys, welcome to the North Idaho Experience. I've got a good friend of mine here, Chris, and we are going to talk about his last assignment before he fully retired with the Fugitive Apprehension Investigation Division. I got it right.
Detail. Yep.
Detail. Damn it. I almost got it right. With Phoenix PD. So I've talked at length about this with him, and some of the stuff these guys were doing is absolutely incredible. I've seen some videos of it. We will get some video to cut in while we're talking so you guys can see what we're talking about. And I wanted to dive into this because I think it's just incredibly cool about the type of people you were able to take down, how you did it, and how the use of force was extremely low, because that's pretty impressive. So I guess let's dive in with your background, dude.
Okay.
Because it's long.
Yeah. I started out in being a constable up in Alberta, Canada. I did Alberta Highway Patrol for...
Is this why we get along so well? I guess I didn't know you were a trooper.
Canadian.
Do you want to wear my trooper hat while we're talking about it? Did you have a trooper hat?
I did, actually.
Yeah.
So...
Was it red?
No.
Oh, okay, that's
no.
cool. That would be
You really want to have a good day, I'll let you wear the helmet back there.
There you go.
Take the helmet. But I started up there, Highway Patrol, just writing tickets, doing commercial vehicle inspections. That was not for me. Then I went over to regional police, Pigeon Lake Regional Police, and worked there for 2 years and learned how to talk to people because there is no backup. And I think that is where I really honed my verbal judo, I guess is what it's called now.
Yeah.
So, but because I had U.S. citizenship, I really wanted to, I was obsessed with the movie Colors and everything. And I was like, oh, I got to go do that. That's what I want to live that life. Right. So for some reason I went to Reno, and loved working there. And I worked for Washington County Sheriff's for about 2 years. And then we were going to have to do a mandatory jail rotation. And I did not want to do that.
Jails are no fun.
Yeah. And looking back, I should have. They were such a great department. They were a fantastic department. So I applied to Phoenix, got on to Phoenix in 1995, and then had just an amazing career at Phoenix, a bunch of ups and downs, but just an amazing career.
And you said total 31 years in law enforcement, right?
Yeah, 31 total. Yeah.
Good Lord. Whew, it's the real deal.
Yeah. And, with Phoenix, do you want to run through that? Or
Yeah.
Phoenix, I got on, and thankfully I got assigned to one of the more lower income areas in the city in South Phoenix, out of the South Mountain Precinct. Just amazing community to police in. The funny thing that I kind of want to point out on that is the community was very pro-police. You have that 0.1% or the 1% that caused the most, but that community was very pro-police. And patrolled that for a few years, really got to experience the big city U.S. policing experience in Technicolor. Went to detectives, nothing cool. I was just an auto theft detective. Did that, promoted, and immediately went over and had a patrol squad. My very first time to kind of lead. And they were just a amazing squad, very patient with me. And did that for a year, went to field training sergeant, and I was the worst field training sergeant on the face of the planet. I was having OITs write drug warrants, instead of writing traffic tickets and that type of thing. So I was really bad. And finally, thankfully, my commander came in one day. I was working late, and he walked in, and It's profanity. Okay.
Good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
He walked in, he said, "Hey, Chris," it was just the two of us. And so I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "You are the worst fucking FTO sergeant I've ever seen in my life." And I said, "Sir, I agree. Just put me wherever you want." He goes, "Hey, I want to move you over to precinct crimes, plainclothes precinct crimes." And they were called net teams at the time. And I said, when do I test?" "Yeah, that was the test." He goes, "You start Monday."
Isn't that funny?
Hell yeah.
It's kind of like, some people take that as a badge of honor to not be the really good FTO.
Yeah.
See,
I was horrible.
but I bet you that the guys that worked for you would tell a different story.
No.
Maybe you just didn't do it the way the department wanted.
I had ran into a guy years later. He was an FTO for me. And, he's promoted. We're waiting to go into meeting. And I think it's in the book, but he said to me, he goes, "You know what, man, I do not like you. And I thought you were really bad as an FTO sergeant." And I said, You're right. And he goes, "But I would have followed you into anywhere." And
There you go.
I said, "You know what? That's the highest compliment." And I said, "As a side note, I didn't like you either." So,
That's awesome.
But I was in the wrong place. And sometimes you got to recognize, or the powers that be have to recognize, you're in the wrong place,
Yeah.
And so they put me over there onto the plainclothes unit. And honestly, it was, working prostitutes and burglaries, and it got kind of a little boring. And so I partnered up with the ATF and began an undercover task force targeting cartel members who were coming up from Mexico to buy cartels. So my guys in the ATF would sell federal weapons to them, but they would never leave, right? So you had Fast and Furious. We were the precursor to that, where Fast and Furious, they float the weapons. And then, that horrible event with the Border Patrol agent happened, right? Where with ours, as soon as the money was exchanged, the SWAT team came in, took us all down, and blah, 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 blah. No weapons ever left but we got quite a few people on that, and that worked out really well. And we, great numbers, and took off a lot of, cartel buyers. So,
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, and then that just parlayed into other narcotic task forces. And this was all being done at a precinct level. And I thankfully had the chain of command, and more importantly, the talent pool that worked for me, because they're the ones that are doing it. I'm just pointing, but they're the ones that are doing it. So all these operations worked out really well. They won awards for them, and,
Do they have similar things right now still at Phoenix that they're working?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. And in fact, Phoenix has really cutting edge gun squad, and they just hunt gun runners.
Really?
They, if a gun is used in a crime, they'll trace that gun back, and make everyone pay for it. I mean, they're really cutting edge on that stuff. Just a fantastic unit. So, and my wife, right before she retired out of that unit, she was lucky enough to work in that unit and retire out of it. So,
your wife was in law enforcement too?
Yeah, she was on the same department.
Oh,
she's a badass.
Really? Okay.
Couple of quick questions. For those that don't know, population of Phoenix, it's a pretty large city, roughly.
Yeah, it's larger area wise than LA, and I'm gonna go 5+ metro.
Oh,
maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Department size, how many sworn? Roughly.
They're suffering right now. I'm going to say roughly 2,300, but we're really short.
That's a big department. Yeah, that's a big department.
But 2,300, like that, when you really think about the area,
that's not enough.
Man, that is crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they are really hurting for people because of the Black Lives Matter movement, and everyone doesn't want to be a cop, but it's slowly starting to tick back. Phoenix is very progressive. There's a lot of chance to move around, which matters to people coming in. And, they're very good to me. You have your ups and downs. You fight with your institutional spouse, right? The department, but very good to me.
That's crazy. So BLM had a big impact on a lot of people.
Huge.
You know, it's crazy to think of something like that. Like when I was joking about this with communism the other day. I was like, communism is actually a really amazing theory, right? It's a really amazing theory if we all had enough and everybody was equal and that was great. That's just not, it doesn't work in reality. The same thing with BLM, you know, there was a theory behind that people jumped on that, oh, okay, you know, we want to make sure that there's equality, that people are not, you know, treated differently because of their race. I'm all about that. I understand it. But the implications and the issues that it actually created with law enforcement to where people don't want to do the job anymore. And it's not just normal. It's people that are good at it. There's people that left the profession. There's people that left major metro cities because they weren't appreciated. And it created such a negative impact on law enforcement and the support of law enforcement, and especially in the larger areas that require it more than anything.
Right. Right.
And for the guys and gals on the ground, like quickly realized that BLM as an organization was extremely corrupt. Sure. The idea is good.
The idea is good,
but
the concept is good.
When you see them on the ground and you see them at a riot face to face, and like the way they're acting towards black officers, you're like, oh, you don't actually care about black lives,
right? You're
just trying to stick it to the system because you're being a shitbag.
This is where the emotional intelligence. At some point, we're just going to have a counter on how many times I talk about emotional intelligence. But this is how people get following, right? They tap into some sort of emotional, some sort of emotional trigger for people, right? If you say Black Lives Matter, it becomes an emotional trigger for people, and you can get a lot of people following it. I mean, even saying gun control. Gun control can be a very emotional trigger for people when they don't even understand how or what or when or what the implications are of taking those away. People can't have that communication or that conversation about it. Instead, they trigger on the emotional, and then they go with it, and they're all in. They'd rather yell at you than have a conversation.
Are you speaking about a certain political class right now, Dave? Because I'm feeling like you might be getting at something.
I feel like they're
zeroing in on something, or?
A little bit. You know, it's funny. So I got to ask: did you guys do anything with human trafficking?
Our team didn't.
Okay.
We have actually the sergeant that just left there is a very good friend of mine. They have a HEAT, human enforcement and trafficking unit. And once again, they're on the cutting edge. And you know, that is some tough work to be involved in, you know, and they work very closely with the ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. They also work with child sex crimes, which, you know, my wife was also in, and all these things are all related. You know, they're just the axis of evil, right? Trafficking children and human beings. But Phoenix is very active in it. The big push on that actually came from Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife.
Yeah.
She was very, very active in that arena, and Phoenix responded and built just a fantastic unit.
How close are you guys to the border?
I'm going to go 2 hours.
So it's fairly close.
Oh no, we're a border city.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So you're getting a lot of bleed over.
A lot of bleed over. Yeah. When we were doing a narcotic task forces, you're seeing the usual pounds and pounds and pounds, you know, now marijuana's, nobody really cares about it, but the bales we would find in garages. I mean, Phoenix is a border city with border problems.
Yeah,
absolutely. So,
hey, people care about marijuana up here. It's still criminalized up here.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wow, coming from Canada, you know, I mean, it's handed out in, you know, the streets basically, but I was shocked by that. But I'll tell you what, as I drive around, I don't see the same issues.
Okay, hold on. What issues are we talking about here?
Well, you know, the homeless people, and the garbage everywhere. And, you know, my wife and I, we were here for the 4th of July.
Yep.
And I, you know, text you afterwards, and I was like, hey, there was no shots fired. There was no fights. There was no homeless people in front, like camps. And it was mind blowing. And then the thing I noticed, and I text you this, is when I was walking back to my truck, because got to park a ways away, all the plates were from Washington. And I was like, why are all these plates from Washington? You know? And Kathleen's like, I don't know. We'll ask Seth. And then later at the room, she's like, do you think they all come here because they can't enjoy their own parks for the fireworks? And I go,
Yep.
I bet he's going to verify that.
Yeah.
I'll bet he'll verify that.
So you saying there's some sort of undertone that crime and everything else goes away when drugs and illicit activity isn't around?
It's like it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
I mean, they've been calling marijuana the gateway drug forever, right? And there obviously is something to it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's probably more than that, but there's something there. Like when you start legalizing even the little things, then bigger things become more normal. And then you slide down that road. That's just the reality of it.
Well, I have people constantly, they're like, so you're telling me that even if I have a medical reason to have marijuana in Idaho, I'm like, well, you should talk to your doctor about where you live.
Yeah.
Because no. Like, still doesn't
Now,
apply.
that's not to say you go right over the border in the first pot shop in Washington.
Yeah, it's right there, the
in
big green
Liberty
one.
Lake, right? And it's going to be all Idaho plates, right?
100%.
So it's like you can do it.
I had
but
somebody,
you run the risk.
not that anybody's not liked us ever on Instagram or YouTube, but no, I had somebody that was complaining to me. Didn't we deal with this? The guy, he was reaching out to us, said, you know, you guys complain about Washingtonians coming over here and causing crime and leaving trash. And I'm like, well, that happens. I've been privy to that as a law enforcement officer. I've seen it and it's irritating. He goes, you guys come over here and commit as much crime. And I'm like, really? Give me an example. His example was, you guys come over here and buy marijuana all the time. And I'm like, wait a minute. Lawfully, we come over there and buy marijuana in your state that is legally, you're allowed to? Like, yeah, but you take it back to your state. I'm like, when they do, it's our problem and we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
But that was his big push. He's like, you guys come over here and you buy marijuana. I'm like, it's legal over there.
Yeah. There's a difference.
Yeah. And if you get caught with it over here, you still go to jail. Just so we're clear.
Yeah, coming over the border, there are no shortage of signs. Cannabis is illegal. Cannabis is illegal. As I'm driving down, okay, I get it. But
coming across from Canada?
Oh, yeah.
No,
really?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen any of those. That's
Oh,
wow.
Well, they'll get you that way on the marijuana, but if you go north with a gun, by God, you're done.
Don't do
right.
that. Don't do that.
I was amazed at the search that happened to me, not going into Canada. In fact, we didn't have hardly anything. They're like, what are you here for? I'm like, cheerleading competition. They're like, oh, you're good. But then coming back into the US, man, they like, our kids were sleeping. They like opened up the car and I'm like,
oh, maybe they're looking for weed.
I'm looking at him, I'm like, all right, I mean, go for it, I guess. I mean, we obviously had nothing, but I mean, it was more, there was more search coming into the US than there was going out, which actually surprised me.
Here's where you went wrong. You should have only rolled your window down an inch.
And said,
refuse to identify yourself.
Traveling?
Yes, tell them you're a free man, that you're traveling.
Yeah.
And it works every time, I think, right?
Yeah.
Is that how you do it?
See how well that goes.
Yeah, good luck.
all right, well. So cool. So you also have a book, correct, that you wrote?
Yes. Yep.
I haven't heard about this yet.
I read it. It's called, I wrote it down. Why Here, Why Now?
Right.
I gave it to Eric to read, but Eric apparently doesn't read either.
Yeah.
So,
He's
it's
busy.
sitting on his desk still.
We have trouble with words,
yes.
Eric and I.
It's a very short book. It took me about a day,
Shorter
and a,
than
half,
the
a day
real
to read.
estate contract.
It is.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How'd you get?
After leaving FAID, retiring out of there, we used a risk principle model on all of our operations. And, you know, I'll go into, like you and I talked about, go into some of those operations. But we used a risk principle model called Why Here, Why Now? And what we were finding was, and I can't claim credit for those words because we got a new lieutenant. And he was watching us do our operations. He loved the way we did them. He loved how strict they were. But it was my fault one night, and we were getting ready to take a guy off. He was armed, had done, I think, some 211 or armed robberies and stuff. It's funny how we still speak in code, right? Some armed robberies or something. But he was staying in a big hotel off of a highway, and we had a great tactical plan. And he'd always walk out to the garbage bins because he didn't want the garbage in his room, of course. And I said, okay, he's going to be in a compressed environment. We'll utilize surprise and speed, take him in that compressed environment, and, you know, utilize a flashbang, you know, interrupt his OODA loop, and then we'll take him and we'll just deal with him then. So I called my lieutenant and said, hey, we're ready to go on this. Basically, I'm already putting the things in motion because he's the new lieutenant, and he's a very seasoned tactical lieutenant. And he was like, oh God, that sounds great. He goes, yeah, I just need you to answer kind of why are we doing this here and why are we doing this now? And I was like, well, I just told you. And he goes, yeah, no. He goes, so what about all the 300-400 people in that hotel right now when they hear an explosion go off in the parking lot? And I go, well, we'll be out of there quickly. And he goes, are there kids in the hotel? I go, I don't know. And he goes, oh, okay. And the hotel's been cooperating with us for the last 3 days while we've been tracking this guy. Yeah. And now we're going to disrupt their entire, residence. And I go, so we're not doing this? He goes, I think you guys can do better, which was a good answer. So it was a great answer. So I hung up the phone. I was mad, because it was a great plan, but he's right. And the calls to city council from, the Fairmont or the Marriott or whatever it was to the chief would have rolled downhill at the speed of light. And as I sat there, and he wasn't even on scene, I sat there and I looked over, and 200 yards on the other side of the hotel in a parking lot were these white vans with baseball equipment bags parked, stacked up. Yeah. So right here turned to not here, not now. And we sat on this guy for 3 days, and finally he checks out. He walked by us a bunch of times, gun in his waistband, walked out, checked out, got in a car, drove to a store, and we took him off, basically walking up to him. No fanfare, no nothing. So it was kind of a click moment for me, and we need to start asking that principle more and more and more often, because you guys know this, but the community optics matter now. They absolutely matter. And to say they don't and to ignore it, you are setting yourselves, your team, and your department and your community up for failure. So I wrote a book listing some of the incidents where we used why here, why now. And it is just a principle where you take 1 more second, 2 more seconds, and you look around. And I use business examples in there. Well, 2 businessmen here and former first responders, so you get both sides of it. But I use some business examples, and that extra second where you ask yourself that question really begins to turn your wheels, and you go, you know what? Maybe I don't need to do this right here, right now. Maybe I've had a couple bourbons and I shouldn't be on Amazon right now. You know, maybe I don't want to talk to my boss at the Christmas party after I've had a couple beers, and those are joke examples. But for us, it was, hey, he's got a rifle in the car. He's good to go. The venue is good. Our 360 is good. Are we going to do this now? And I would stop the play and I would ask myself, why here? Why now? And I would say 80% of the time we were agreeing, but 20%, no, shut it down. I want this reset. I don't like that, or I don't like that. And the guys got so used to it because they were such professionals that they'd be like, okay, boss, no problem. And that is the consummate professionals. So
that is such a hard thing to do for guys, men and women in that role, because, they're knuckle draggers, like probably. Mm-hmm. Like, fuck it, let's do it, right? But to take a step back, and that's the leadership role of like, all right, we're not looking at everything here. It's a huge principle. I read the book and I found myself asking that question to myself on everyday things, right? Like having a conversation with my wife about a certain thing. Hey, let me take in the 360. What's her mood right now? How distracted is she? Like, you know what I mean? Like, right. Is this really the time to do this?
Yeah,
maybe not. So I think that principle applies in everyday life.
Yeah, for
everybody.
Yep.
So huge.
You guys recently, expanded, right? Yep. And
expanding.
But I'm sure, maybe not with these words, but you thought, why here, why now? Is this the time?
Right.
And then the discussions begin, and mm-hmm. because you guys are a very strong team, those discussions are probably pretty blunt, mm-hmm. and real. But you are asking yourselves, why here, why now?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's no lack of bluntness between us for sure. It's funny. You say why here, why now? And I think a lot of that comes from, especially in law enforcement, fire, and just first responders, is that we've had enough people get hurt. We've had enough bad experiences to where, we're very impulsive. Law enforcement, I mean, you talk about it all the time. You talk about the OODA Loop. That's a very fast process. And so to get somebody off their OODA Loop, I mean, that happens to law enforcement all the time. Like, hey, I mean, even in FTO, there's times where I had to be told like, hey, okay, what are you doing right now? Oh, well, shit. Let me like pull back and think about it. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, especially for law enforcement, I can think about, we talked about some recent times where, we've talked about the simple ones where you pull somebody over and they're just out of their mind, just, oh my God, just, you know what I mean? It's not even worth it. And you're just like, fucking, here's your ID. I don't even want to deal with it. Right. But even more so, I had a situation up here once where I stopped somebody, and I remember hearing a story, and I think that was what was peeking in the back of my mind, is even when I would take somebody into custody or start that, a lot of it was, I'd never thought that I was asking that question, but I think that's what goes through my head. Why here, why now? Like, is this right time, right place? I always remember the story of a guy telling me that he walked up to a sedan late at night. And as he was walking up, the windows weren't rolled down and it was completely black windows. And I remember hearing a story saying like, he just got like, the hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he's like, and he just went back in his patrol car and left. And, he had the guy's information, everything else. 2 days later, they see him, they stopped him. And he told the cop, he goes, you stopped me the other night. He's like, yeah. And he goes, I was ready to shoot you that night. He goes, I had a gun up against the window.
Fuck.
And just because he didn't go. And I had a similar situation once up here where that why here, why now? I remember I stopped 4 guys and I looked at them and I'm like, this is a trouble car. And I had cover coming, but they were another 5-10 minutes out, and I'm dealing with them. And it turned out just the conversation that was happening, and ended up being one of those ID, see you later.
Yeah.
Pretty much like,
I can think of a handful of times
catch you another time
in my career that I had that exact same experience. And yeah, you taking in the totality of the circumstances, and you're like, is this the right thing to do right now? Is this really smart?
Yeah.
For example, I was out in the middle of nowhere in the woods, dirt road, 5 dudes in a pickup truck. Right. And I had that feeling.
Right.
And I'm like, backup's 45 minutes away. Like, is this the right decision to make right now? Like, does this stop really matter? Even if they're doing some bad shit, does it really matter? In my mind, no.
Yeah.
I'll let it go.
And that was hard because it sounds like both of you have had some rural experience where you don't have backup. I was lucky enough to be in a city where I had somebody within 5 minutes just about all times.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked earlier. I mean, being out in the middle of the Canadian brush with guys hunting and, jack lighting, hunting with spotlights, and you're like, I'm going to have to, they're all hammered, and I'm really going to have to talk my way out of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that helped later on when I went to the big city. Something you're touching on that is interesting is a concept on our team we used to call ego-driven tactics, right? And the ability to stop something and ask yourself, why here, why now? Or I don't care how I look, I'm going to back out of this and then I'll deal with it later is an incredibly important trait in being successful and safe, right? And what we found, and when we called it EDT, ego-driven tactics, when we began to push things and chase things is when FAID failed. It's when we began to fail. And then when we watched other units do it and they would push things, and it's ego, it's this competitiveness that begins with the suspect. And when you remove ego-driven tactics out of something and you complete a very sterile box, which is what we attempted to do on our operations in FAID, then it becomes very clear.
Yeah. Because
you're not driven by that competitiveness, that ego, the famous "it's got to be us" line. You know what I mean? I don't want to hand it off to gangs, or I don't want to hand it off to SWAT team, and they don't want to hand it off to us because there's this, but that was probably the most dangerous thing that I saw repeated was ego-driven tactics.
So what's that prey drive kicks in? It's like, here we go. Well, we're doing it. You don't think about the consequences. So I guess we should touch on the main role of that unit.
Okay.
Yeah. Because what were you guys? What was your task?
So it changed when I got posted there in 2016. And please, I'm going to say this disclaimer one more time. This isn't me. This is a group of men and women who we all came together to do this. So when I say please just whoever's listening out there going, oh, wait, what about all of us?
Right.
It was all of them.
Right.
I just kind of gave the vision, which was pounded into me from above. But when I took it over, FAID had come off of a very catastrophic event a few years prior, and the Phoenix police has a long memory, and they wanted FAID changed. So they wanted the tactics cleaned up substantially. They wanted the training documented. They want more administrative stuff. They wanted it brought into the 21st century, right? They were doing amazing police work. 1,000 people a year they're arresting. I mean, just amazing cops doing amazing work. But we had a catastrophic event, and they wanted it to change, So I got brought in. The chief pulled me in and said, this will change or the whole entire unit will go away. And I said, okay. And then they brought in a commander who absolutely, but that was his vision as well. So putting ego aside, because there was always the SWAT team in FAID, we're two brothers who fight on the front lawn all the time, right? Putting ego aside, went to the SWAT team and said, hey, we're going to start doing fresh crime fugitives instead of longer term fugitives. So like you just committed to shooting, FAID is now going to start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that requires some different tactics. So SWAT team came in, and and I can talk a little bit about, but those SWAT is more of a symmetrical tactic. They use symmetrical tactics. FAID is more an asymmetrical tactic. So, but the fundamentals are the same, right? So we went offline for almost 6 months. We did small pickups, but once we got the blessing from them and some other teams around the valley that, yeah, they are good to go, then we went back full operational. And it was a beautiful thing. And I'll tell you what, it was like, it was like pulling teeth to get these guys and girls to change, and, begging, leading, everything I could do to get them to change. And they did. And then they just became just a tier 1 fugitive team. And FAID is one of the few standalone teams in the United States, because usually they're attached to U.S. Marshals.
Yep, that's what we have up here too.
Yeah,
it's kind of a joint venture.
Yeah, and U.S. Marshals are a fantastic agency.
Right.
But Phoenix has a little different mindset than the Marshals, so they wanted our policy, our tactics.
Got it.
So that's the only reason. So what FAID then transformed into was we were heavily connected to homicide, robbery, child sex crimes, burglaries, everything. And if it was a violent crime and it was a fresh crime, we would begin going after it immediately.
Okay.
There was no more pushing that into the pile. It will get to it in 3 months. They want real-time response to real-time crime.
How many people on your team? So
we have 2 teams, roughly 8 to 10.
Okay.
Each team.
There's a lot of violent crimes in that area. There's enough to keep busy for sure.
Yeah. And in the years I was there, and they still continue these numbers, you're going to be in the 400 to 600 per year.
Okay.
And we ran 2 to 5 operations a day.
A day?
A day.
God dang.
Yeah.
How do you plan all that?
Yeah,
you're hustling.
They do not stop. The lieutenant that did the why here, why now. Thankfully, after the 3rd operation, dynamic operation, and one day he'd be like, "That is it. You guys are done. Go home, go shoot, go do whatever you want to do," because he began to see the burnout. he began to see it, and because they won't stop.
It starts to become a nature, and you start to find yourself by that more than your family and everything else that you do. And it's difficult. I think a lot of law enforcement and fire, they struggle with that because you start to self-identify with this whole identity of, oh, this is what I do. I'm part of FAID. This is, we keep you're doing good things, right? We keep these hardened criminals off the street. We put people back behind bars. We keep the neighborhood safe. And then you go home and the only thing that you find that you do is, fix the cupboards and hang shit, as Kristen says for you. And it doesn't have, not that it should, but people, you don't have the same rewarding feeling of like, oh, but really that's what matters. So I love that he would send you guys home, because I would have the same thing. I mean, I would constantly tell guys, I'm like, look, if you need to go home, if there's something, I'll deal with the chiefs. I'll deal with it. If you got to go, if it's a family thing, you got to be with your family. You're mentally burned out, whatever it is. Let's just, because it gets monotonous.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you're taking 400 to 600,
that's a lot,
dudes into custody a year.
Yes.
Or women. What's the percentage that was armed?
I think it's in 30s.
Okay.
Mid 30s.
I would assume there'd be a lot of use of force.
You would assume that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with the tactics that we developed on that unit, they were called trapdoor tactics. And that's what I was talking about, asymmetrical, right? So we worked very asymmetrical, where we stopped chasing people. And so what we started doing was we developed trapdoor tactics, and that allowed the suspect to come to us. So we had an incredible covert surveillance team attached to us in the same unit. I mean, they were just ghosts, but they could develop a pattern of life on someone for a couple days, and we would work along with them, but they would develop that pattern of life. And they would say, hey, Johnny goes to the Circle K between 2 and 3 almost every single day. And then he walks this route. So then what we would do is check that route. If there was any area of apprehension that was good for us and was good for the community and was good for the suspect, then we would start to manipulate that environment prior to him even leaving.
Oh, wow.
So he would walk through our environment that has already changed to help us, come back thinking fat, dumb, and happy. And as he enters that area of apprehension, then a tactical plan is initiated.
Can you talk on what like an average plan looks like?
Yeah. So we tried to stay out of houses. That's a symmetrical tactic, right? You guys have
you also don't have control inside those houses.
You have no control inside the houses. We have no idea who's in there. A SWAT team will take that symmetrically. They will surround it, put armor around it, and then the checklist begins, right? With asymmetrical, we would utilize 2 options most of the time: open area arrests or vehicle containment techniques, and not mobile. I think you're going to start seeing mobile vehicle containment where they do the street jumps. I think you're going to see that going by the wayside soon. But a typical open area one would be like the same scenario. Guy's coming back. He's armed. We see, he has a gun. He's wanted for violent crimes. All the legal, boxes are checked. We would place, 2 cars spaced out, blacked out, but they're undercover cars. They don't, look like tactical trucks, right? Then we would have a less lethal operator, 37 millimeter operator, a carbine operator, a handler, we had quick deploy bangs off our vests. So as he walked in,
that's awesome.
As he walked in, somebody, I would say either I have control or my team leader, hey, you now have control. They would count him in, and he doesn't notice anything. And as he hit that X, or that area of apprehension, we would say initiate. And then everyone would get out. You see the shock, the flashbang goes off, the OODA loop continues to be disrupted. The team closes in, but maintains a standoff point around vehicles usually. And then either he complies or we react to his actions.
Yeah.
I would say, honestly, 98% of the time is you just gain compliance. It's just too overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't care how hard you are. You know, if you got 4 rifles in your face and a flashbang just went off, like you're done.
Right.
You're not thinking about pulling your gun.
And the vehicle containment technique, you know, we really would just softly kind of set those pieces in place, sometimes over a couple hours. We would, you know, if the guy's watching out the window, we pull a car in there, have the guy go to the apartment complex, somewhere fake, come back, pull out, leave. So he got used to seeing that car. And then we would start to manipulate the environment, where I can think of one where he was in front of his own apartment, but there was kids in that apartment. It was glass, and it was a floor level thing. So we had to push that car 2 apartments to the right, where there was a mechanical room and a wall. So he finally leaves, and we park a car in there. And the street crimes guys, once again, masters of their environment, park car, but kind of park it like it's broke down. And then they pour a jug of water underneath of it. And then another car leaves. So 2 FAID cars take up these next spots. Well, the guy comes home, it's his assigned parking. And he's like, you can see him doing this. Well, these cars are occupied by FAID personnel now. So he's doing this. He goes and peeks in the car that's broke down, gets in his car. He's all pissed off. He is not focusing on anything else now, which was the plan. Mm-hmm. He then parks against that mechanical room. And as he parks, another car comes in, pins him to the wall. This car rotates into the side of him. Everyone gets out. A flashbang goes off on the wall. And, you know, it's just this response, you know, over and over again. And the thing with FAID personnel, and our SWAT team's very good with it too, and it was beat into us years and years ago. Nobody yells. I don't want to hear, show me your fucking hands. If you don't show me your fucking hands, I'm going to shoot you. You know, that bullshit, right? They're very, and you've seen some of the videos, they're very calm.
Yeah.
And that freaks people out even more, bad guys out, because they're like, all right, these are a little different dudes. Yep. Like something's not right. These dudes are a little different. So that was really beat into their training. Inoculation training was beat into them almost weekly with their training. And it just pays off to have that calm.
Yeah.
When we're executing these operations.
Have you seen calm is so powerful. Yeah. It does when people expect a response, right? And if you don't have that same response, sometimes people don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We talked about this with command presence and everything else, you know, walking into a room and gaining command presence for people. I always joke around because the captain that taught us command presence here, he looks like you, right? You walk into a room, people will probably listen to you. But you have a midget walk into the room. It's like, I got to have something to try to really get people's attention. So, but yeah, I mean, that does it. The calm, I don't know if you saw the video. I'm sure you did, of the guy, he gets into a shooting. He's driving around. He's got his coffee.
Oh yeah. That was beautiful.
Yes.
He puts his coffee on the hood, gets out, walks around, unzips his rifle, sets it, comes around the corner, takes a look. Boom, shot. And he's like, shots fired. I got one guy down. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was the only thing that disappointed me is that he didn't finish his coffee.
Like, damn, bro. Right.
Right. He was so just, okay. Hey, this is what the scenario is. I had no reason to get fired up.
And anytime you can, like you said, go against what someone expects you to do, it just throws people off. When I was a bouncer, I started carrying a mouth guard in my pocket. And when, you know, like almost every night, right, you're getting into physical altercations or people are challenging you to a fight. So I'm not the
same thing as real estate.
I'm not a shit talker. Right. Maybe I should do this at work. So when that would happen, I would stop talking. I would put the mouth guard in my mouth and they'd be like, what the fuck? Why does this guy have a mouth guard in? Like, holy shit. And shut them down. Like, done. No more. They don't, yeah, that's it, dude. Like, they don't want to fight. They don't want to fight a dude that has a mouth guard and he's ready to go. Like, who the fuck carries a mouth guard?
I already got to watch him pull out his retainer every day.
So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start carrying a mouth guard at work now.
Should.
Some other agent starts running their mouth.
Like, put it in.
Come on, put it in. Let's go.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, it works great.
Anytime you can, like you're saying, to interrupt that and do what they're not expecting. That's that asymmetrical, you know.
Yeah.
You immediately stop that paranoia loop they're in all the time.
Right.
And it can be just something so weird, you know, and we even just put a Amazon package by someone's door because they were running up the stairs, you know, because they knew they were wanted, and they were running up the stairs. We occupied the apartment directly across from it.
Okay.
And it was like one of those little catwalks, you know, where the apartments face each other. And we put this huge Amazon package there, and the guy comes running up the stairs and he's like, what the? And he's sitting there. Well, the delay. That's all we needed was the delay, right?
That's awesome.
And door came open, flashbang hit. He runs downstairs to the team that's waiting for him at the bottom. So now he is in a closed environment, you know, in a stairwell. So it's just, it doesn't always have to be this massive tactical rollout that disrupts the entire community.
Right.
And that is what the command staff was happy about, was the smaller operational footprint does not cause the reverberation within the community.
We should get some of these quick flashbangs for the office.
I know.
We could have some fun.
That'd be so fun.
I think in Idaho, they're probably legal, right? You can.
I had pretty much everything here. I mean, it's either that or Tannerite, which one do you want to go with?
I had a buddy, I won't say his name. He gave me these airsoft flashbangs.
Oh,
I thought they were a toy. And then on, it was like July, whatever. Oh my God. January, what the fuck? New Year's Eve. Wow.
Yeah.
Kids are all out lighting sparklers. I'm like, I'm gonna throw a flashbang out there. Holy shit. I almost killed a bunch of kids. I was like,
really?
I should have tested.
Did it shoot BBs off and stuff?
No, it doesn't shoot BBs off. It's just extremely loud. It's a fucking flashbang, dude.
Wow.
And they are marketed as airsoft flashbangs. So the real deal. Be careful with those. But I have some. So you might get a surprise one day.
Examples of firemen wanting to be cops. Okay. My last shift, was down in Needles, and it was my last shift with my crew. And I'm like, we're going to do something fun. So I ordered some airsoft guns.
Oh boy.
And like 10,000 BBs. I had to ship them to my engineer's house in Vegas because they have cancer causing elements. So they couldn't come to
Prop
California.
64.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, he brings them in and he just had a box. He's like, what is this? I'm like, we're going to have fun these last 2 shifts. So we open these up and we have 3 airsoft guns. And I'm like, it's just game on. I go, you got to have goggles. I was like, either no shirt or you got to wear just a t-shirt.
Oh God.
And it's game. Well, anyways, we probably shot all 10,000 of those BBs.
They are still finding BBs there.
They were everywhere. Oh, they were everywhere throughout the fire station, man. I mean, all over the place. It was so much fun. We all looked like we had chicken pox by the time we were done with those 2 days.
Was it out of view of the public, or?
It was in the station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was in the station. No, we weren't running around outside. I've done that too, but no, this was just in the station. It was a good time.
It's the shenanigans. Yeah. It's all fun and games until you're in the shower at work someday and someone reaches over the top and fires a 38 blank in there. Full nervous system shut down like a fucking flashbang went off.
That happened to you?
Yeah. Sam.
Was it Sam? I'm going to get him.
It was, dude.
Yeah, when we do SFSTs,
yeah,
I'm going to
fucking destroyed me.
I'm going to get him talking about that.
Yeah, it was bad. Oh,
That's great.
He'll love to talk about it.
So let me ask you guys this, and this is something that is kind of interesting. I want to touch on this for pursuit policies. What was your, especially when you were going after fugitives that were recent fugitives, what was your pursuit policy for people like that if they did get away?
So with the why here, why now, really, we went more to electronic tags on things a lot.
Okay.
And phone tracks. We really went to that. And the reason why we did that is if there was a compromise in surveillance. So here's a statistic. In the 10 years, I was there, almost 8, and then since retirement, so 10, 11 years, with all of that, with all those arrests, with all those people, all those guns, FAID has been in 1 OIS during the initiation.
Wow, that is incredible.
During the initiation of a trapdoor tactic.
For those of you that don't know, OIS is an officer-involved shooting.
Right.
So thousands and thousands of armed people that have committed a bad crime.
Holy smokes.
And they've been in 1. Now, we have been in 2 other shootings, but it was a compromise of surveillance. Right. So the person it wasn't during a direct action, so we got compromised and then there was a gunfight. But yeah, just 1 in the last 10 years.
Jeez.
So that is how clean and how, I want to say disciplined these men and women are. It's just unbelievable.
That's so cool to see stuff like that, because so often people think that you're just hammering these criminals, or you're being, I mean, to put yourself in a position where nobody's getting hurt is huge, right? That's why you train. That's why you do jujitsu, so that you actually don't hurt people.
Right.
Right. But that's pretty cool.
And to answer your question, so I don't sound like a politician, but to answer your question, we really went to electronic surveillance, right? Different means. And what we would do is front load all that. So prior to even putting an operational plan in place, like I talked about the street crimes unit, I mean, they could write up a tag warrant in 15 minutes. I mean, it was just unbelievable the work they could do. So what would happen then is if we had an opportunity to take direct action and initiate that tactical plan, but I didn't like it, and anyone on the team can call in abort, anyone. And there was no question, right? And when I heard my team members call abort, I was proud.
Yeah.
I loved it, right? Because that really showed me that they were thinking for the team, for the community, for the department.
That's awesome. There's a bigger picture. We used to deal with that with offensive versus defensive fire. It's fun to go inside. If you guys have ever been inside a fire, it is fun to go inside a structure fire, man. I mean, it is so cool. Like you're in there. I mean, it is a neat environment. It's fun to go do that. But there's many times there's not somebody in the house. The house is well involved, or it's just a little bit past where it maybe is safe. And it's like, what's the gain here?
Mm-hmm. Why now?
All the time I would call something defensive. Like it's only 45% burnt. I promise you it's going to be 100% leveled when we're done with this either way.
Right.
And there's going to be water damage in there. So what are we doing? Like, this is an exposure. This is an exposure. Let's just protect those. Let's let this thing burn. I understand it that they're going to lose stuff in there, but that stuff's already done with smoke damage and everything else in the heat.
Same exact concept.
Yep. Yeah. Just let it go. It is what it is. It's not worth somebody dying over it.
Right. And we just let we let them sail. Okay, now we do have the very rare person. We had a serial killer. He was actively killing people around the valley. That we're not floating that.
No.
So we're not floating that. And we've had a few of those, and where the chain of command will ring and go, "You will stop this now.
Go get it." Yeah.
Okay. And that's that. But that is incredibly rare. We would let them float, reset. A lot of times I'd send the guys home because we're tracking them. They don't know we're there, and they need to get the competitiveness out of them, go home, watch some television, come back, let's reset, and we'll start dealing with the problem again.
No, that's really cool that you guys could do that, because why here, why now? I mean, I know a lot of people up here, the pursuit policy changed very drastically up here, mostly before I got up here, but people were still really resistant to it because this is a little cowboy, right? I mean, Idaho's a little cowboy, so there's a little more freedom to do things the way that they've always done them. So when change happens, especially for guys that have been doing law enforcement for a long time, it's really hard. And I remember getting behind the pursuit policy and actually going, this makes sense. When you talk about the gram factors and everything else, the biggest one is like, can you say this person is an imminent or immediate threat to the public or their officers? Well, a guy that, a woman that just shot her husband and takes off fleeing, how do you argue that person's going out to hurt other people? It was a relational conflict, right? There was an identified target for that person. It wasn't a random shooting. It wasn't something else to where this person, and you guys probably know this, I'm sure you do, is that 99% of these people turn themselves in within 72 hours. Mm-hmm. Even if they go, if you know who it is. Now, if you can't identify them, that's a little different, right? If we don't have a reason, but when you can identify them, they have nowhere to go.
Yeah. The problem is pursuits are really fun.
They are,
but they're damn dangerous. Dude.
Right.
Like, you're putting a lot of people at risk when you're hauling ass through, especially a city street.
And when you're making that person run too, they're going to be even more
dumb shit,
even more dangerous than you are.
Yeah.
It's tough.
The dudes, the hardened dudes where I worked in Orville, they would run balls to the wall, like terrifying. Right. Yeah. And you really got to balance. Okay. How many families are we putting at risk? We're chasing this dude, because I know he's going to run every red light and he's going to do it at 100 miles an hour and he didn't give a fuck.
Yeah. I was always pretty anti-pursuit. I didn't
even want to turn on my red and blues.
Yeah.
It's wisdom right there.
To me, it's the community. The competitiveness is why we're doing this, because you're right. A lot of times, okay, you committed a murder, but it was drug dealer 4 days ago.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's competitiveness.
Oh yeah.
It's ego driven that is causing these pursuits. A lot of
100%.
these.
Oh yeah. I've outran a train before. Ego
Hard to
driven.
get across.
Oh yeah. Everything came down.
Oh,
And
buddy.
we were trying to get to a fire before another engine, and we see Amtrak coming. And we get on the radio, we're like, delayed by train. And then engineer's like, I think I can make it. Like, go. And right across. And then next thing you know, disregard. No longer delayed. We're like, what?
The famous hold my beer.
Oh man. Well, I mean, it was pretty safe. I mean,
So this team sounds like my dream job, and probably a lot of other dreams. I imagine there's not much paperwork for the guys taking people down, right?
this isn't your dream job?
No.
Okay.
That's my dream job.
No, there's quite a bit. The sergeants, there's a lot of people.
See, that's fine because I wouldn't be a sergeant.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
The investigative details, I mean, they're the ones that are really, we do 1%, they do the other 99,
Yeah.
right? The detectives that handle these cases. I mean, like we don't want to over importance our role in the entire process where we're just a sliver. But they got to complete, summaries or investigative supplements to what we did, our actions. We all wore body worn. So
It's a fucking half page, bro. I got that in 5 minutes. Let's go. Done. So what I'm getting at, I guess, was it really competitive to get on that team? Because I imagine a lot of people wanted there.
it is very competitive to get on there. It was. And, they had to be, we used to get, and I talk about it in the book, the Call of Duty crowd that wanted the beards, the flannels, all the tack gears.
Tattoos.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, the tattoos and everything.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, we really started looking for solid decision makers. And we would throw scenarios at them that would instill competitiveness. And if I saw that competitiveness, nope, I don't want
So
it.
you're cutting out the guys with the big ego
Yep.
that they're going to get the prey drive and not be able to turn it off.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have to fit. I mean, the team is so disciplined. And yeah, do they make mistakes? Of course they do. I mean, I talk about some in the book. There was some big mistakes, right? But I own those. But you want people in there who are on these teams who can make independent. I want to hear somebody that can go abort, even though it's their third day on the team.
Yeah.
And if it's a bad abort, you're like, well, wait a minute. Why'd you abort that? Well, I just didn't feel it. The rest of the team needs to shut up, and everyone needs to have that power. And that's why I want those strong decision makers and very mature people.
Yeah.
Is this a model for other departments? Are other people doing the same thing?
In the Valley, it has become a model in the Phoenix metro area. Some tactics differ, and that's one of the reasons why I started Bishop One, is because I really I'm passionate about getting these tactics out to the masses because they work, right? And I don't want police officers getting hurt. I don't want community members getting hurt.
Right.
I don't want suspects getting hurt that don't need to be hurt, And when I watch a lot of the takedown videos, I'm seeing still kind of 1995 tactics. The van door slides open, 5 guys get out, start yelling commands, and you're just like, every time I see that, I just tense up because those tactics they're antiquated, and people are going to get hurt.
Right.
And so I really am trying to push this out now to the masses, and the guys that are on the team who are still doing it are the lead trainers. The guy that helped develop trapdoor tactics with me, Chris Marrero, my lead trainer, he's going to come out. And then the dudes who are doing the job still are going to come out.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bishop One, that's your training company. And your goal is to just hit departments nationwide.
Yep. Big, small.
Give them the skills.
And it's not just SWAT team tactical teams, right? You look at gang squads. They're out there picking up their own people.
Yep.
And narcotic units, right? Narcotic task forces, burglary reduction teams. Like these teams, I always say, the real cops on patrol, they're also out there doing this stuff
right.
too. You get some hard hitting patrol officers who are just hunting people in their area. These will work for them as well, So it's more the mindset, the manipulation, and that that really important principle of why here, why now.
And I'm guessing when you do that with the Bishop one with the training, you're implementing SOPs and everything else into it, correct?
Correct.
Because that's where things go wrong, right? When you have when people take something and they're like, oh, and then they start to deviate.
Yep.
You ever heard of the normalization of deviance? You ever seen that video?
I haven't seen the video.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. They talk about the normalization of deviance leads to predictable surprises.
Mm-hmm.
That's
good.
It's amazing. And that's what happens. I see all the time with these SOPs. People start to deviate from something enough to where it becomes normal to take out that one line. Mm-hmm. Well, that one line is there for a reason. I think that's probably why you're putting together this training. Like there's a reason that SOP is there and why it's written the way it is, because you've seen what happens without that line. And if you do it enough, you can predict it's going to happen.
We did see it a lot, and I'll be honest with you, like a lot of the agency in the Valley, just very competent tactical apprehension teams. But when you introduce the idea of slowing things down, no, man, we're too busy, we're too fast. Oh, okay, that's an ego-driven response. What I'm trying to say is just slow things down, front load, your surveillance, electronic surveillance in this, front load your environmental manipulation, front load your pattern of life. Once you have all that done, then you have so many more options rather than just whipping the door van open and then running out, but there was a lot of pushback because, well, we don't want to do what you do. Okay, well, I'm not all I'm trying to introduce you to is a new concept that I think will save lives. That's it. And that's awesome. Have the statistics to support it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Bishop one. All right. You guys have a website for that?
Yep. It's at www.bishop1training.com.
Okay.
Spelled out or number?
Oh, good question. Spelled out.
Okay. We might want to put that on there too.
I'll link it in there. Right. So departments can get in touch with you through there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then they can get through info@bishop1training.com or Chris Aboussafy at Bishop1.
We'll go with Bishop One. Yeah. Chris Aboussafy's. Is that common spelling?
Yeah.
Common spelling.
Common spelling.
And what about your book? Why Here Now? Why Now? Where can people get that?
That is on Amazon.
Okay.
Nice.
And it's a short form book. It only takes about an hour and a half to read.
Did I have you sign my copy? I don't remember if I did.
I don't think so.
We need to get a sign. We need to start putting up signed stuff up here, man. We get people to write things.
We've got,
that is cool.
Like I heard a little birdie told me you're working on a new book.
Oh, yeah, I am. She did tell you.
That would be your wife, yeah?
Yeah, she did. Yeah, I'm working on a new book on the fall of leadership and the rise of management, and how we're seeing this in so many places, not just police, but especially in business. We're seeing that leadership has become too unobtainable for people because it requires effort.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing the rise of management.
Man, I'm like trying to take in this concept right now. Like it makes sense. But
it does make. I mean, we're seeing that everywhere, right? We're seeing that
fall
everywhere.
Leadership, the rise of management.
Every department, you see that. Even when I came on, there was the informal leaders, right? Not even a sergeant, but just a salty road dog.
Guys,
and that guy knows his shit more than the 5-year sergeant that just came in, right?
100%.
And that's the informal leader on that level. And of course you have leadership in there, but yeah, you see,
that's a good one.
You see management coming in and it's just like,
I want to read that. That sounds good. I'll read the other one too.
Yeah. Please do.
I'm interested.
And I always want the feedback. I've told you this, and please, you can say, it sucked. I don't like it. Okay.
No, I will tell you if I think it sucks. I
love it.
Why Here, Why Now it was a very short read, but it just hammered that principle into my brain where literally for weeks afterwards, I kept running through my head. Like, is this the right time? And is this the right place?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'm not going to bring that up with my wife right now. I'm going to wait.
That's a good, it could be a marriage book.
It could be a lot of things book.
I should have checked.
I'll start giving that to all my friends. They're like, oh man, I'm having marriage issues. Be like, here you go.
Read this.
Yeah, figure this out. Awesome.
Okay. So man, I think we hit on everything that we wanted to talk about. Anything dangling that you had in the back of your mind?
No.
Okay.
Just congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
Your team just keeps killing it. So
we're having fun. I'll say that.
Well, that's the secret, right?
Yeah. And it's a good time.
Yeah.
Enjoy coming to work.
You know what? Because we have probably the same environment, we've all had in that previous job, right? Like we have that at work. You
Yeah.
can be blunt with each other.
Mhm.
You know, we have a lot of fun.
That's why
When it's time to work, we work
so
hard.
it ends up in our mugs over there.
Yeah, don't touch
Pretty
that thing,
cool,
by the way. When it's time to work, we work hard. When it's time to play, we play hard. And
Yeah,
those are words to live by, in my opinion, and it works out.
for sure.
Right on.
Well, thanks for coming down.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate
All right.
it a lot.
Catch you next time.
Later.